Marcus Chen settled into his first-class seat, his fingers drumming quietly on his laptop as other passengers boarded the San Francisco to New York flight. Despite being worth billions from his groundbreaking AI security company, he preferred wearing simple black turtlenecks and jeans. His father had always taught him that true class wasn't about showing off. As passengers filed past, lead flight attendant Karen Webster kept glancing at him with narrowed eyes. Marcus was used to these looks. Even after building his company from nothing into a $4.2 billion enterprise, some people still saw only his skin color first. "Ticket and ID, please," Karen demanded loudly, causing several passengers to turn and stare. Marcus smiled politely, retrieving his documents from his laptop bag. "Of course." Karen snatched the papers, examining them with exaggerated scrutiny. "These seem unusual," she said, her tone dripping with suspicion. "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" An elderly woman across the aisle looked up from her book, frowning. "Young man's been sitting there since I boarded," she said firmly, "and he's been nothing but polite." Marcus thanked the woman with a slight nod, but Karen wasn't finished. "Sir, how exactly did you get this first-class ticket?" Her voice carried down the aisle, deliberately drawing attention. "I purchased it, just like everyone else," Marcus replied calmly, though his jaw tightened slightly. He built his success on staying cool under pressure. "I'd be happy to show you the receipt." "That won't be necessary," Karen snapped. "I've been working these flights for 15 years. I know when something isn't right." She tapped her fingernails on her clipboard, a sharp staccato of disapproval. The tension in the cabin was palpable. A young man in a business suit had already pulled out his phone, quietly recording. Marcus could have called the airline's CEO. They'd met at several tech conferences. He could have made a scene. Instead, he thought of his father's words. "Son, sometimes the strongest move is staying calm in the face of ignorance." "Ma'am," Marcus said quietly, "I understand you're doing your job. Would it make you more comfortable if I moved to another seat?" Karen's smile was pure triumph. "Yes, I think that would be best. Economy is right through there." She pointed toward the back, not even trying to hide her satisfaction. As Marcus gathered his belongings, a chorus of protests erupted from nearby passengers. The elderly woman was particularly vocal. "This is absolutely shameful." But Marcus simply stood, straightened his jacket, and walked toward economy with perfect composure. He'd faced worse building his company, and something told him this wouldn't be the end of the story. It was just the beginning. What he didn't notice was that the young man with the phone had already hit upload, and his video was about to go viral before the plane even left the ground. Karen stood at the front of the first-class cabin, her walkie-talkie crackling, as she spoke in hushed tones to the flight crew. The simple request for water that had started everything still hung in the air like a bad smell. "Sir, your behavior is becoming disruptive," she announced loudly, despite Marcus sitting quietly in his seat. A baby started crying somewhere in the cabin, adding to the tension. Marcus looked up from his phone, confusion written across his face. "I'm sorry, but I only asked for water." "How is that disruptive?" Several passengers were now openly staring at the scene. A businessman in row 3 had his phone out, recording everything. The elderly woman who had defended Marcus earlier was shaking her head in disgust. "Don't play innocent with me," Karen snapped, her voice getting shriller. "I've seen your type before, trying to sneak into first class. You need to return to your proper seat in economy." The word proper hung in the air like a slap. A flight attendant trainee, Sarah, stood behind Karen looking mortified. She tried to intervene. "Karen, I checked his ticket earlier. It's valid." "Be quiet." Karen cut her off. "I'm the leave attendant here. Sir, if you don't move to economy immediately, I'll be forced to have security remove you from the aircraft." Marcus slowly stood up, his 6'2" frame making Karen take an involuntary step back. His voice remained steady, but there was steel behind his words. "Let me understand this correctly. You're threatening to remove me from this flight Because you don't believe I belong in first class. I'm removing you because you're being disruptive, Karen insisted, though her voice wavered slightly. A man in a business suit stood up. This is ridiculous. He's done nothing wrong. I'm recording all of this. Others joined in, their phones out, capturing every moment. The video would later show Marcus's dignified composure as Karen's discrimination played out in high definition. It's all right, Marcus said to his fellow passengers. I'll move. He gathered his laptop bag, maintaining eye contact with Karen. But you should know that actions have consequences. As he walked toward economy, whispers followed him. A teenage girl typed furiously on her phone, her thumbs flying as she posted what she'd witnessed. By the time Marcus settled into his new seat, #firstclasswhileblack was already trending. What Karen didn't know was that Marcus had just texted his assistant. While the plane taxied down the runway, his team of lawyers was already drafting documents. Sometimes, he thought, the best revenge isn't served hot or cold. It's served through systematic change. The economy cabin fell silent as Marcus made his way down the narrow aisle. Everyone seemed to sense something wasn't right. A young woman quickly removed her purse from the empty middle seat next to her, gesturing for Marcus to sit. As he settled in, phones lit up throughout the cabin. The video of his humiliation in first class was already spreading like wildfire. Passengers whispered and pointed, some offering sympathetic smiles, others looking away in embarrassment. Marcus pulled out his phone, hundreds of notifications flooding his screen. His company's PR team was blowing up his phone. The video had hit Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok simultaneously. #firstclasswhileblack and #airlinericism were trending nationwide. Sarah, the trainee flight attendant, approached him with tears in her eyes. Sir, I am so incredibly sorry, she whispered, slipping him a bottle of water. What Karen did was wrong. I tried to stop her. Marcus smiled kindly. It's not your fault. Sometimes the best way to fight ignorance is to let it expose itself. Throughout the flight, passengers kept approaching his seat, sharing their own stories of discrimination. A young black executive told him about being mistaken for kitchen staff at his own company. An elderly Asian woman described being told to go back where she came from, despite being a third-generation American. Karen avoided the economy section entirely, sending other attendants to handle service. Every time she appeared at the front, dozens of phones would raise to record her, making her visibly uncomfortable. Halfway through the flight, Marcus received an email from the airline CEO, beginning with "My deepest apologies." But Marcus wasn't interested in apologies. He was planning something bigger. He opened his laptop, pulling up his investment portfolio. His net worth of $4.2 billion meant he could do more than just file a complaint. As the plane cruised at 35,000 feet, he began drafting emails to his board of directors. Sometimes, he typed, the best way to change a broken system is to buy it and fix it yourself. A child across the aisle recognized him from a magazine cover. Aren't you the AI guy? She asked innocently. The one who made computers fairer. Marcus smiled. Yes, that's me. And it looks like computers aren't the only things that need an upgrade in fairness. The rest of the flight passed with Marcus working quietly, but his mind was racing with plans. This wasn't just about one flight attendant's prejudice anymore. It was about changing an entire industry's culture. Little did Karen know, her discriminatory actions weren't just going viral. They were about to catalyze a transformation in airline history. The plane touched down at JFK as the video reached 5 million views. Marcus's phone buzzed with notifications from major news networks requesting interviews. But he had more pressing matters to attend to. Walking into the airline's corporate headquarters 2 hours later, Marcus carried himself with the same quiet confidence he'd shown on the plane. The CEO's secretary recognized him instantly. His face was now plastered across every social media platform. Mr. Chen, the CEO, Richard Thompson, rushed out to greet him. Please come in. This is a terrible situation. Inside the plush office, Marcus sat across from Richard, who was sweating despite the air conditioning. "We've already suspended Ms. Webster pending investigation," Richard began, shuffling papers nervously. "That's not enough," Marcus replied calmly. "I've looked into your airline's history. This isn't the first discrimination complaint, is it?" Richard's face paled. Marcus pulled out his tablet, displaying a spreadsheet. 17 similar incidents in the past year alone, all swept under the rug with quiet settlements. "Now, see here," Richard protested, but Marcus held up his hand. "Your airline stock has dropped 12% since the video went viral. Your board is in panic mode, but I'm not here to destroy your company." Marcus leaned forward. "I'm here to buy it." The CEO's mouth fell open. On his tablet, Marcus pulled up financial projections, corporate restructuring plans, and diversity initiative proposals he'd drafted during the flight. "Your airline is worth $2.3 billion. My offer is $3 billion, well above market value. My team has already drafted the paperwork." Marcus's voice remained steady. "You can fight this, watch your stock plummet further as more stories come out, or you can be part of the solution." A notification popped up on Richard's computer. The video had hit 10 million views. Outside his office, phones were ringing nonstop with media inquiries. "You planned this," Richard said slowly, realization dawning. Marcus shook his head. "No, Karen's prejudice did this. I'm just making sure something good comes from it. The paperwork will be here in 10 minutes. Your board has already expressed interest." The CEO looked out his window at the planes taking off and landing. His airline's future hung in the balance, and they both knew it. Marcus sat in his penthouse office, overlooking the Manhattan skyline. His phone hadn't stopped ringing since the news broke. Tech billionaire acquires major airline after discrimination incident. But he wasn't interested in publicity. Instead, he studied the faces on his computer screen. Interviews with hundreds of airline employees sharing their own experiences with discrimination, both as staff and passengers. "Play the next one," he told his AI system. A flight attendant appeared, tears in her eyes. "I've been passed over for promotion 6 times. They said my hijab wasn't company image." His assistant, Lisa, entered with more reports. "Sir, the numbers are worse than we thought. Minority employees make up only 12% of senior positions, despite being 45% of the workforce." Marcus nodded, making notes. "And the customer complaints. Over 3,000 discrimination-related incidents in the past 5 years. Most were dismissed without investigation." The door opened again. Sarah, the trainee flight attendant who tried to help him during the incident, walked in. Marcus had hired her as a consultant for the airline's transformation. "The current training program is a joke," Sarah explained, spreading documents across his desk. 1 hour of diversity training, most of it outdated from the 1990s. Marcus stood, walking to the window. Below, planes took off and landed at JFK, each carrying hundreds of stories, dreams, and possibilities. "We're not just changing an airline," he said quietly. "We're changing how people travel. Every passenger, every employee deserves dignity." He turned back to his team. "Start with immediate changes. New training programs, revised hiring policies, anonymous reporting systems. But that's just the beginning." His phone buzzed. Karen's termination papers needed his signature. But Marcus paused. Sometimes, the best revenge wasn't about punishment. It was about education. The boardroom buzzed with energy as Marcus unveiled his transformation plan. Senior executives, union representatives, and employee advocates filled every seat, watching as he outlined the most ambitious airline overhaul in history. "Our first order of business," Marcus announced, "is a complete restructuring of our workforce policies." He clicked through slides showing new hiring targets, training programs, and promotion pathways. The airline's stock had initially dropped 20% when Marcus announced his takeover. Industry experts called it financial suicide. But Marcus saw beyond the numbers. "Every employee will receive comprehensive cultural sensitivity training," he continued. Not just a one-hour video, but ongoing education. We're partnering with leading diversity experts and civil rights organizations. He revealed partnerships with historically black colleges, women's professional networks, and LGBTQ+ organizations. The airline would offer scholarships, mentorship programs, and clear paths to leadership positions. Then came the biggest announcement. We're raising salaries across the board. Flight attendants, ground crew, pilots. Everyone gets a 25% increase. The room erupted in gasps and whispers. "But sir," the CFO protested, "the costs." Marcus held up his hand. "I'm not interested in quarterly profits. I'm investing in people. Happy employees mean happy passengers." The transformation wouldn't be cheap. Marcus was putting $500 million of his own money into the changes. But as he looked around the room, he saw hope in people's eyes. Karen's face flashed across his mind. She'd been offered a choice: termination or completing the new training program and working in customer service at minority-owned businesses for 6 months. To everyone's surprise, she chose the latter. "We're not just changing an airline," Marcus concluded. "We're setting a new standard for corporate responsibility, and we're just getting started." The room erupted in applause. Outside, the sun set over the runway, where planes bore the airline's new slogan, "Rising Together, Flying United." 1 year later, Marcus stood in economy class on a packed flight to San Francisco. The other passengers didn't immediately recognize him as the airline's owner. Exactly how he liked it. The changes were evident everywhere. The flight crew reflected the diversity of their passengers. New uniforms featured designs from multicultural artists. Even the in-flight magazine showcased stories of inclusion and cultural exchange. A familiar face appeared with the drink cart, Karen. After completing her training in community service, she'd asked to return as a regular flight attendant. Her transformation had been remarkable. Now, she trained new employees on cultural sensitivity. "Water, sir?" she asked Marcus, their eyes meeting. There was recognition, understanding, and something more. Genuine remorse turned to growth. "Thank you, Karen," he smiled. She paused, then spoke softly. "Mr. Chen, what you did, it changed more than just the airline. It changed me." The airline's success had shocked the industry. Profits were up 40%, employee satisfaction had doubled, and customer complaints about discrimination had dropped to nearly zero. Other airlines were scrambling to copy their model. Marcus received a text from Sarah, now the head of employee relations. Another airline had approached them about implementing their training program. Change was spreading, one flight at a time. A young black girl across the aisle watched him with curious eyes. "Mom," she whispered loudly, "isn't that the man who bought the whole airline because they were mean to him?" Marcus winked at her. "Actually," he said, "I bought it because everyone deserves to fly with dignity, even those who once denied it to others." The plane soared through clouds, carrying not just passengers, but a powerful message. True revenge isn't about getting even. It's about making sure nobody else has to experience what you did.